My name is Lenora Whitcomb. I'm 61 years old, and I've spent most of my life quietly managing the chaos of family, work, and responsibilities that never came with a thank you. I've always believed in showing up, in keeping promises, in staying calm when others lost their heads. But today, as I approached the polished oak double doors of Marlene's old estate in Portland, I felt a knot of tension coiled tight in my chest. The living room was filled with muted chatter, distant relatives murmuring like wind through autumn leaves. The sunlight filtered softly through the draped curtains, casting an almost gentle glow over the expensive furniture. But the warmth didn't reach me. My children, Trevor and Hannah, stood directly in front of the single chair that had been reserved for me, their posture rigid, blocking the path as if they were guards at the gates of some fortress I had no right to enter. Trevor's dark suit was tailored perfectly, his arms folded. "It's just for immediate family," he said, flatly. "You're not mentioned." Hannah's eyes flicked toward the navy blue folder clutched in my hands, her expression sharp. "Don't make a scene." "Mom?" she added. I inhaled slowly, letting the air fill my lungs. My heart pounded, a rhythm I recognized from years of managing crises, from the countless times I'd had to stand steady while storms raged around me. All the birthdays I'd planned, the late nights I'd stayed up worrying, the hands I'd held through scraped knees, broken hearts, and grief they seemed to press against me in that moment, invisible and unacknowledged. I didn't step back. I didn't speak. I held the folder tighter, the familiar weight grounding me. My eyes swept the room, taking in the polished floor, the soft flicker of sunlight on the curtains, the distant whispers of relatives who barely looked up. This wasn't the first time I'd faced resistance or disbelief, but it was the first time my own children had turned their body against me, physically blocking my seat, denying my presence. I adjusted my grip on the folder, feeling the smooth leather beneath my fingers, and stepped forward. The chair was still there, waiting. So was I. And I knew that what came next would not be determined by their words or their denial. It would be determined by what I carried in my hands. I shifted the folder slightly in my hands, letting its weight settle against my hip. The leather was cool beneath my fingers, the edges worn just enough to hint at years of careful use. Inside were the originals, every notarized document, every signature, every legal affirmation that proved my place here, my right to this moment. I let my breath steady, slow and deliberate, as if each inhale grounded me further in the quiet authority I had always carried beneath the surface. Trevor's eyes flicked to the folder first. A faint crease appeared between his brows, the kind that betrayed a hint of unease he tried too hard to mask. Hannah glanced next, her posture stiffening, the half-smile she usually reserved for polite gatherings vanishing. Neither of them said a word, but I felt it in the tension hanging over their shoulders. In the subtle way they shifted their weight, as if unsure how to proceed. The attorney sat at his desk, tall and thin, flipping through papers with disinterest. His assistant, a young woman named Kay Mendes, hovered nearby, not quite attentive but ready to respond if needed. The room was formal, polished, orderly, yet none of it contained the quiet storm building in me. I exhaled, allowing my eyes to scan the room, taking in the murmuring relatives, the polished oak, the muted sunlight spilling over the carpet. I tilted the folder just enough to catch the light, revealing the corner of the first page, the embossed seal barely visible. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The weight of the folder, the silent knowledge of what it contained, spoke louder than words. This is everything they thought they controlled. I whispered quietly to myself, barely audible, My voice was calm, measured, but inside it thrummed with a pulse that neither child could read, a quiet warning that the game had shifted. I adjusted my grip again, ensuring every movement was deliberate. The folder was no longer just a collection of papers. It was proof, leverage, and a shield all in one. The faint flicker of uncertainty in Trevor's eyes told me he felt it, even if he didn't dare admit it. And as the attorney looked down at his documents, still unaware of the storm at his feet, I let the tension linger just long enough to make its presence known. The room held its breath with me. I knew that when the moment came, the folder would speak for me in ways no words could. I shifted my weight slightly, leaning against the polished edge of the table, and for a moment, the tension of the room faded. My mind drifted back through the years, tracing the quiet, invisible lines of a life built on care and diligence. I remembered early mornings in our Portland home, the sun barely lifting over the Willamette River, when I would be up before anyone else. Breakfasts prepared for Trevor and Hannah, eggs and toast laid out, while they still blinked sleep from their eyes. I would guide their fingers over homework problems, read aloud passages from books too advanced for their ages, and wipe away tears I couldn't always soothe completely. Derek, my husband, had always been steady, a quiet presence behind me, keeping the house warm and the furnace running. Yet he relied on me to navigate the intricate tangle of daily logistics. When his heart failed unexpectedly, the weight of managing life alone pressed down with sudden, unyielding force. I became everything at once: nurse, cook, accountant, emotional anchor. And then there was Marlene, my sister, my Irish twin by barely 11 months, whose laughter once filled our shared bedroom with sunlight and mischief. When her memory faltered, when letters repeated the same jokes over and over, I was there, patient, guiding her to doctors, keeping her safe, turning our guest room into her sanctuary. Trevor had once scoffed. "She's not our responsibility." Hannah shrugged, busy with her own schedules, leaving me to carry what they refused to see. I never hesitated. Love demanded it. I remembered nights spent at hospital bedsides, the antiseptic scent thick, fluorescent lights humming overhead, my hand holding hers while she slept. I remembered the day she had asked me to write our wills together, her clarity in a world slipping away, insisting we protect each other. I remembered my own exhaustion, the quiet sacrifice I carried so no one else ever would. And yet, after all of it, here I was, in the polished estate of her passing, blocked by the very children I had raised. They could not see the years embedded in my hands, the strength cultivated through tireless care, the quiet patience that had held our family together. I clutched the folder tighter, grounding myself in its weight. All those years of giving, of unwavering presence, had led to this moment. I would not be dismissed. I would not be denied. The office smelled faintly of cedar, a quiet reassurance in the stillness that greeted me as I entered. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that carried the weight of countless cases, each spine a testament to careful record-keeping and deliberate judgment. Mr. Harold stood behind a high counter, tall, gray-bearded, his hands moving deliberately as he flipped through the pages of the folder I had handed him. I set my navy blue folder on the counter, feeling the smooth leather beneath my palms. Each document inside was a piece of truth, a record of years carefully preserved. The 2008 will, notarized and filed with the county, lay among supporting statements and medical attestations that confirmed my late sister Marlene's clarity at the time of signing. Harold's eyes met mine briefly before returning to the pages. "This is unexpected," he said softly, almost to himself. "Legally, It overrides any amendments made last fall. I allowed a small nod, careful to keep my expression calm. Good. Let them hear it during the reading, I said, my voice steady. Not confrontational, not triumphant, simply measured, deliberate. He looked up, scanning my face with a hint of approval, then returned to his careful scrutiny of the documents. I watched as he laid each page flat, confirming that everything was in order. Signatures, notarizations, witness statements. Even after all I had sacrificed, I feared it might never be seen as enough. Back in my apartment, the city hum of Portland filtering through the half-open window. I took the envelope from the drawer where I had hidden it days ago. Its cream surface felt smooth and unassuming, but inside it held the truths Emily had never been told: adoption papers, the names of her birth parents, details of the accident that had orphaned her, and the sacrifices I had made to raise her as my own. This confirmation was not just about property. It was recognition, validation of the life I had quietly sustained for decades. I took a deep breath, feeling my hands relax around the folder. Thank you, I said simply, letting the truth of her wishes fill the space between us. Harold nodded, aware of the gravity, but not imposing it further. As I left the office and stepped into the muted Portland light, I felt the folder's weight no longer as a shield but as a confirmation of authority. The path forward was clear, and the confrontation that awaited at the will reading would unfold on my terms. I stepped back into the room, the polished floors reflecting the faint sunlight filtering through the tall windows. The air was taut with expectation. The distant murmurs of relatives had quieted to almost nothing. Trevor and Hannah still stood near the chair, their postures stiff, but the subtle tension in their shoulders betrayed the unease they tried to hide. I approached the table with measured steps, the navy blue folder resting calmly in my hands. Every eye in the room flicked to it, curiosity and suspicion mingling in silent judgment. I placed it flat on the polished surface, sliding it toward the center. Please give this to Mr. Harold, I said, my voice even unwavering. It supersedes any later amendments. A flicker of disbelief passed across Trevor's face. He leaned slightly toward Hannah and muttered, "Let's just wait." But neither of them moved to intercept me. The folder sat there, weighty and authoritative. A quiet announcement of facts they had never anticipated. Other relatives shifted in their seats, their eyes flicking between the folder and the children. Sensing the subtle shift in power, the room was hushed, the silence thick with anticipation. I didn't flinch, didn't falter. My hands rested lightly on the folder, no longer a shield, but a statement. Hannah's eyes widened slightly. Trevor's jaw tightened. For the first time in decades, they were confronted with the consequences of underestimating me, not as a mother, but as a woman who had meticulously preserved the truth for this precise moment. I remained calm, letting the moment stretch, allowing the weight of the folder to speak where words could not. Every signature, every notarization, every document was proof. The shift in the room was palpable. The balance had quietly, irrevocably changed. As I stepped back, I allowed my gaze to sweep the room, noting the subtle acknowledgments, the unreadable expressions, the dawning realization that I had quietly reclaimed authority over what was rightfully mine. The office smelled faintly of paper and lemon oil, a quiet reassurance amid the tension that still lingered in my chest. Mr. Harold laid out the forms carefully, each document crisp and precise, awaiting signatures that would secure the estate against future disputes. I sat across from him, hands folded lightly on the table, observing every movement with steady attention. I want protections in place, I said clearly, my voice measured. No one can access this estate without my consent. Harold nodded, his pen poised. Understood. This will take a few weeks to formalize, but everything will be updated to reflect sole ownership and legal authority. I scanned the papers, titles for the house and land, bank account authorizations, the language for a no contest clause, and felt the quiet satisfaction of control. Every signature line I touched, every clause I reviewed was a reaffirmation of the years I had spent safeguarding not just property, but dignity, and I'd like a trust set up, I added, for Claire. She's been reliable, present, and honest. She'll handle a portion of the estate responsibly. Harold glanced at me, a small smile breaking his formal composure. Not all of it. Not all, I replied. Just enough to ensure her independence, enough to reward loyalty and integrity. We moved through the process deliberately, step by step. Each initial, each written affirmation, was a quiet declaration that the estate and my authority would no longer be taken lightly. The room remained orderly, but I felt the weight of long years of preparation pressing subtly against every page. By the time we finished, the legal groundwork was solid. I leaned back, letting a small, calm breath escape me. The folder in my hands, once a shield of uncertainty, now represented foresight and finality. I had protected more than property. I had protected the principles I had lived by, ensuring that respect and boundaries would endure even beyond the reading. I returned home to the quiet of my Portland house, the soft hum of the city outside mingling with the muted tick of the old clock in the hallway. The sun filtered through the lace curtains, touching familiar furniture worn by decades of use, and I allowed myself a moment to breathe. My hands rested on the edge of the kitchen table, the smooth wood grounding me as memories surfaced unbidden. I thought of Trevor and Hannah, my children, now grown and accomplished in their own ways, yet in this room, their entitlement had made itself plain. I remembered the nights I stayed up nursing fevers, guiding homework, listening to scraped knees and broken hearts, quietly absorbing each worry that was not mine to bear, but I bore anyway. The birthday parties meticulously planned, the meals cooked from scratch, the countless trips to appointments and practices they had been given freely, with no thought of repayment, no expectation beyond their smiles. And yet, despite all of that, they had assumed I would step aside without protest, that my presence could be dismissed as easily as an unused chair. The sting of that assumption was sharper than any argument, any confrontation I had faced in courtrooms or boardrooms over the years. I had spent decades teaching, guiding, supporting, and loving, and they had overlooked the strength that quietly endured beneath it all. I pictured Derek, my late husband, and how he would have stood beside me, his calm voice guiding, steadying, reassuring. When he had passed unexpectedly, the house had felt empty in ways words could not capture. I remembered the careful planning, the silent endurance, the way he taught me that authority was not always loud. It was present, deliberate, and unyielding when needed. Marlene's absence also echoed through my thoughts. Her laughter and mischief that had once filled this house, now replaced by stillness and echoes of memory. I realized that this inheritance battle was about more than property. It was about recognition, about the acknowledgement of a life lived with responsibility, with integrity, and with love that had rarely been noticed. I pressed my palms against the table and let the weight of those years settle over me. I had given everything I could give without losing myself, and now I understood clearly that love did not mean surrender. The folder, the legal protections, the trust for Claire. They were not just measures of control. They were the affirmation of the life I had preserved for myself. I allowed a small, steady smile. The past had shaped me. Yes, but it would no longer dictate the terms of my presence in the lives of those who had underestimated me. The sunlight slanted through the blinds in my home office, soft and warm, illuminating the neat stack of legal documents on my desk. Each paper had been carefully prepared, the language precise, the signatures in place. I adjusted the folder containing the newly drafted trust for Claire and took a moment to appreciate the clarity of the process. After years of uncertainty, the estate was secure, and the path forward was deliberate and just. Claire, my cousin's granddaughter, was seated across from me with a gentle curiosity, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. At 26, she had been a constant presence, showing up without expectation, quietly dependable in ways that mattered more than money ever could. I watched her eyes flicker over the documents, noting her calm attentiveness and steady demeanor. "You showed up. You stayed. You asked nothing and gave much," I said softly, placing a hand briefly over hers. Her lips curved in a small, shy smile. I felt the weight of the moment recognition, not for obligation, but for loyalty, presence, and integrity. We sipped our tea in companionable silence, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional sound of pages shifting as I double-checked the trust documents and letters I had written. The letters were addressed to her, explaining the portions of the estate she would inherit, why she had been chosen, and the values behind the decision trust: respect and acknowledgement of what had truly mattered. Claire nodded as she read the notes I had drafted, her expression softening with understanding. She didn't need more than the words, the gesture, the affirmation that her consistency and care were seen and valued. I folded the letters carefully, placing them in a small envelope to be opened at the appropriate time. The trust, the documentation, and the letters were all measures of more than financial inheritance. They were symbols of recognition, ethical clarity, and the quiet rewards of steadfast loyalty. For the first time in what felt like decades, I allowed a deep, steady breath. The estate was protected, the trust secured, and loyalty honored. The balance of fairness had been restored. The Portland evening settled over the city as I returned home, the warm glow of the streetlights spilling across the hardwood floors. Trevor and Hannah arrived shortly after, their steps hesitant, voices low. They lingered near the doorway, unsure how to begin, aware of the boundary I had quietly drawn. "I didn't know about the prior will," Trevor admitted, his tone careful, almost sheepish. Hannah remained silent, her eyes flicking between us as though measuring the distance between apology and acknowledgement. I folded my hands over the navy blue folder I had carried for so long, letting its weight remind me of the control I had claimed. "I won't rescind it," I said, my voice steady. "Let it be what it is." There was a pause. The children shifted uncomfortably, their previous confidence diminished by the calm certainty in my words. No one spoke for a moment, the silence heavy but not tense, more like the weight of understanding settling into the space. We moved to the kitchen, and I prepared tea, the familiar ritual anchoring me. Trevor and Hannah hovered near the counter, hesitant but present. The conversation was brief, polite, but it carried a new undertone recognition of boundaries, acknowledgement of the authority I had always maintained quietly, and a subtle awareness that the assumptions they had held were no longer valid. Once they left, I settled into the living room, the soft Portland light filtering through the curtains. I looked around at the furniture, the family photos, the little imperfections that marked years of care. A quiet satisfaction filled me, not triumph over them, not vindication, but clarity. I had upheld what mattered: my dignity, my principles, and my autonomy. For the first time in a long while, the house felt aligned with the life I had lived, the promises I had kept, and the boundaries I had enforced. The folder rested safely in my hand, no longer a shield, but a symbol of foresight and quiet victory. I leaned back and let the evening settle around me, the world outside moving on, while I remained grounded in the truth I had protected.